Every record you own and every song that you've ever played and loved has got a story behind it. Even the stuff that you may not know from artists that you may or may not be all that familiar with have got a story to tell. And it's my job to sift through every one of those stories. Welcome to Baxie's Musical Podcast. If you like what you hear today, share it, rate it, review it, pass it around to all your friends, and also be sure to follow the show on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for regular updates on upcoming episodes. Today, we're brought to you by Metro Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram of Chicopee. Visit Metro's state-of-the-art dealership right next to BJ's and Big Y on Memorial Drive. Or visit MetroJeep.com and drive home in your new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram today. And now here's today's interview with Logan Lynn on Baxie's Musical Podcast.
It's Baxie's Musical Podcast. Resistance is useless.
So today's episode isn't just about music. Yes, my guest today, Logan Lynn, is a musician, a writer, a producer, a filmmaker, and a TV personality. Yes, he is about to release his 11th album this month called Softcore. But Logan Lynn's story is so much greater than just about the music. It's a story that's essential and important. Again, it's not just about the music. Logan's amazing journey is also about mental health. It's about suffering, about abuse and stigma and addiction. But then it's also very much about spirituality and recovery and about embracing one's mental health. It's also very much about advocating for mental health awareness and acknowledging that mental health matters and that shame and secrecy should be replaced with acceptance and acknowledgement and hope. Listen, I could talk about music forever, and Logan and I certainly will talk about his music a lot. But my conversation with Logan goes so much deeper than that. As someone who was raised by two mental health professionals, I completely respect what Logan represents and how he's worked to chip away at the stigma of mental illness. As far as his music career goes, Logan Lynn has been making music for the last 24 years. The music is provocative, it's engaging, it's personal, and in many ways, it's defiant. And I mean that in a very positive way. It's especially true when you consider what he's had to do to get there. As a gay man raised in a deeply religious family, as a survivor of sexual abuse, harassment, and a very public battle with homophobia, and as a man who has been in recovery for the last 16 years, Logan Lynn's significance and his example are profound. And so it was a real honor and a pleasure to speak to Logan Lynn on Baxie's Musical Podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good. Good to see you. Appreciate you doing it. I like the fire you got lit back there.
Yeah, thank you. You gotta stay warm.
I wanted to start off by saying, most of my interviews are about music, and we'll talk about softcore at length. I promise you that. But I wanted to start off by saying, I grew up as a kid being raised by two clinical mental health professionals. I mean, I'm someone who's very much aware of mental health, very much in support of people getting help. Yeah. And I have to say that, your story, I think, is an incredibly important one. And I got to say, I applaud you for the manner in which you've tried to destigmatize mental health. And
Yeah.
I want to ask you about that and what it means to you to kind of chip away at that stigmatization.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. I appreciate that. When I was a kid, I was really in need of help. I was in crisis from age 7 till 2008. And just every opportunity to be seen or saved or helped or even just like harm reduced, any of those opportunities were just missed.
Yeah.
And I was really tuned into pop music, like Tiffany and Debbie Gibson, New Kids on the Block at the time, and then that turned into alternative rock after that, obviously. But I think had any of those artists at the time stood up and said, "Hey, like it's normal to feel sad. It's okay to like be experiencing what you're experiencing, whatever that may be," I think that would have really helped. And so as I became like a public musician and had more connections in the music industry, the idea way back when was to try and recreate what I might have needed, like
Yeah.
with other pop stars, other singers, other musicians and bands, activating their shows, activating sort of their own release campaigns in the direction of how do you take care of yourself, making it more normal to just like start talking about that stuff with famous people. And I did that. I had a campaign that was at the time, I think very unusual. Now it's like very usual, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like proud of if I played any role in that. I feel very proud. I think a lot of people got the bug during those years around like it's okay to stand up and say how you're actually feeling. And I think rock and roll, music is so interesting because we like all learned our ABCs that way through song. And some of us learned the books of the Bible and can still recite that because of the song. But I think similarly, when you're talking about wellness or self-care or mental and behavioral health, the music as a vehicle is really powerful. And I think that's been true in my life. And I've obviously tried to recreate that with other bands and in campaigns as well.
I don't think the pandemic necessarily was great for people, but I do think that what it did do, I think it opened people's eyes about, taking care of yourself, and not
Yeah.
just physically, but emotionally too. And I think in a lot of ways, when people discover, hey, you know what, I can maybe do something on a Zoom call with
Right.
somebody, and that feels safe.
Yeah. Lower stakes.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. You grew up in a very deeply religious environment. Your family was very, very
I did.
religious, and I would
I did.
assume you probably not necessarily embracing the idea of mental health.
No, or any of the other things going on with me. Yeah, no, it was not a welcoming environment.
Yeah, I mean, here you are. You're a gay kid. There's a
Yeah,
lot going on with you, as far as you being victimized. But
sure.
what's interesting is, here you are in a crisis situation. You're really at this intersection of spirituality and perceived sinfulness. I mean, what a
Yeah.
horrible burden to place on a kid.
Yeah, it was not good for me. I think, I was addicted to crack, cocaine, and alcohol and whatever else you got. From age 14 through 2008, I was addicted for 16 years, and I used drugs for a reason. I came by that honest. And I think, a lot of the damage that was done to me was sort of spiritual, right? So
Yeah.
I had to heal in a spiritual way as well. And I think I had just celebrated 16 years off of all that stuff I just rattled off in March. And so I've now been well longer than I ever was addicted or sick or struggling or suffering, whatever, any combination of those words at any given time for those years would have been appropriate. And it feels really cool. It feels good. I think I have healed. I think a lot of that old stuff, whether it was, religious trauma or just weird being alive as a gay kid, as you say, certainly experiencing different abuse stuff as a child. I think navigating all that was really hard. And getting off of drugs was also really hard. And so to have done all of that stuff and be on the other side, I feel really useful around advocacy and around just helping other people maybe find a path to healing or recovery. Like I'm pretty solid now, and that is a miracle. I don't think anybody in my life would have had that on their bingo card, but it did happen, and it's really been a lovely turn of events.
See, I've always been a real big believer that maybe some of the best times to go into therapy and to do self healing like that is when things are actually good.
Yeah,
Because nothing is in a straight line. Things are always fluctuating up and down. Even as you recover from the abusiveness and the pain that you've suffered, I'm sure
sure,
there are times when there are triggering moments, and
sure.
but it does kind of show a fluctuation on how the mind and the spirit operate when it comes to mental
Yeah,
health.
yeah, and I think my reaction as a healed person to triggers or to maybe just a bad day that I'm having, or just like I'm now in like a part of my life where I have like middle of the night existential crises. That's like a new thing. I think all of that. My reaction used to be very like impulsive in whatever direction, and now I take a much more strategic approach. I take a beat. I don't know that triggers ever go away. And, I think healing is probably a lifelong journey, but I do feel like I have so many more tools in my toolbox than I did as a young person.
That would make sense considering that you've had to go through this journey to get there.
Yeah,
Like a lot of people do, like especially in recovery where you need to hit that that one defining moment that says, okay,
sure.
now it's time to really, cut the shit and take care of myself.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
but one of the things that is so true, and I know people who do this all the time, and I understand it. I hate to see it, but I understand it. When people are victimized by whatever it may be, there's
yeah,
a tendency, a strong tendency to self blame and to
sure.
act out and to manifest that suffering in ways that are not productive and maybe
Yeah,
even be destructive. That was certainly true of you in the
yeah,
sense, especially in this abusive situation where there's a grooming the not just of you but of also your family and people
sure.
around you.
Yeah,
That's a terrible burden for a family to accept. Tell me a little
yeah.
bit about that for you.
Sure. Yeah, well, shame is one hell of a drug. I think that keeps people in suffering for much longer than they would otherwise. I think that shame is not useful. And so working through that as a family was really important. My family also, like, up until even recently, we have periodic times where we talk about it pretty openly. And I think forgiveness is a two-way street, and everybody's on it together, which has been really cool. My parents are really good people and always were trying to do their best. I think, similarly, they were victimized in that environment. And so, I think as I became older than they were, as all of that was happening to us as a family, I have just developed much more compassion for them around how these things happen. I also think, like, it was just such a different time in the world, like around awareness and around how kids were treated, and personal agency that children were given, and in especially that kind of religious environment. It's just different now. And I think what happened to me, while those things do happen, I think there's so much more awareness about it. And I think that awareness that's happened in the culture in these years since has been really useful to my parents as well, and my family, as far as just like everybody being kind of gracious with, they did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah. When you talked about the drug and alcohol use, you said you came by that honestly, considering
Yeah,
the background. Um,
sure.
for many people, they're using it to mask the pain or to just
Yeah,
escape. It took you a good long time before you finally were able to tackle that. And I mean, you went through. My understanding is you went through rehab a number of times before it finally started to settle in. What
yeah.
was it that finally connected with you to say, I really need to start taking this seriously?
Yeah, I mean, I almost died. So I had several overdoses that were public. That last one was very public and very scary. My legs and arms didn't work for several days. Like, I was like in the hospital in a really scary way. And during that time, I had a doctor just finally ask me, like, what has happened to you? Like, did you choose to ruin every relationship in your life? Did you choose to, do this to your body? Did you choose homelessness? Is this a choice? And it made me so mad. I just, in that moment, I was like, of course I didn't choose this. And he said to me, well, then what happened? What happened to you? And I think I was able to, in that moment, go back in time in a way with somebody who was like a trusted professional, to really like get to like the starting point of what
Mm.
I was self-medicating, why I had been doing this so long, in so many different ways, and so effectively, just hurting myself so effectively. And there was also something that happened in that moment where I had a culturally competent doctor who was like, "Hey, there's this drug called naltrexone, and we can give you that, and it will take away your cravings." And I was like, "Okay, give it to me." Like, everything before that had been like, you can go to 90 meetings in 90 days and pray it away and it'll be fine. Just ask your higher power for help. Like that doesn't work for me. I grew up in a religious cult that abused me. You can't get me to ask God for help. So it was always really challenging to get recovery to work. I met a doctor who approached it medically with
Mm.
me as a medical condition, which is what it is. Now there are spiritual components, like we said, but like there's a medical treatment for crack addiction. It's called naltrexone. You take that pill, and 30 minutes later, your cravings are gone
Wow.
completely. And so that changed my life, right? Like I had the reason I went to rehab so much, the reason it never worked was because I had this itch in my brain that was painful. Like I needed what I needed in order to survive. And that took that away. But then I was able to like get help. I had just gotten signed to Caroline EMI at the
Hmm.
time, and I had been given a huge advance to make my record. And that it was like the last of the dinosaur music industry. Like it
Hmm.
was back when people still bought music. And so I had one of those advances from a major label. And I chose to take that money and put myself in rehab that was long-term inpatient care, dual diagnosis. No one knew where I was. It was totally not the way I was supposed to use that money. They were so mad when I came out. There was no record, but I was alive.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the most important thing I've ever done for my career and for my just being a person who's alive, like redirecting that money strategically and then figuring it out later, while perhaps was a crime, did save my life.
I'm curious because I know anyone who's suffering from a problem with drugs probably should
Yeah.
not find themselves in Portland, Oregon.
No.
But because I mean, obviously that's a city that struggles deeply with it. But you did find your way to Portland. What got you there?
I was really in trouble as a teenager. I was really struggling and was following my parents around, trying to build a relationship with them. My dad became the president of Cascade Christian College in Portland, and it was an opportunity to follow my family there. Um, I also had visited Portland and had gone to this like all ages queer club called the City Nightclub with my friend who came to visit with me, and it was like the most magical night of my life. Like I just felt like I belonged and I had found my community, or something happened, something clicked then. Could have been the drugs, but it was very fun. And I did have it in my mind that Portland was the place that I would get to and finally belong. And that did happen actually. Like I did find my people. Now, my people were junkies, unfortunately, but they were also, important music people. And I think, those of us that survived are still friends, still in community, still making music. And the music part of that old Portland music scene was really cool. The drug part, not as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that you found music and you found that to be very helpful to you in all of this. You find yourself in Portland, and then after a period of time, my understanding is you start getting attention from people like Elliott Smith and Courtney Taylor
Yeah.
from the Dandy Warhols,
Yeah.
and this is a time when Anton Newcomb is you're really exploding things too. And I just you know
Yeah.
to go from a situation where you're feeling spiritually rejected to somehow artistically validated had to be a really powerful thing for you to experience.
Yeah, I think it was addictive a little bit, like that I belonged and that I was of value somehow. Like that was a brand new thing. And man, I liked that feeling. At the same time, like those bands were the only ones who liked what I was doing. No real regular people. Like when I would play a show, everyone was just like, ooh. And that went on for a really long time. But the Dandy Warhols managed my career. Folks like Elliot and Dan Reed and those folks took me under their wing and really helped me become, I think, established.
Yeah.
And I think it took a long time for people to really care out there. I think I often am followed by and listened to by other artists and like gay movie stars, but like it's been tough to like get the people to connect. And I think a lot of that was because of the types of music, types of songs I was writing, probably a little bit because of the people I was around. But I started chasing that more than I was chasing anything else. I wanted that feeling of belonging, of fame, of being special
Yeah.
or something.
What I think is important, though, is I think the way you did it is really interesting because I mean anyone can write a love song or
Yeah,
or a song about a car, but I mean
right.
you were writing very much to who you are
Yeah,
and to your community in the gay community, and I think that's
yeah,
really wise of you to have done because I think it artistically speaking, you're being true to yourself and honest. And I think
yeah,
I think that's like one of the things where when I hear like like an Elliott Smith, I feel like like he's in the room and
yeah.
speaking to his own truth in his life. And I get the sense that's very much how you've approached your music too.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm still around. Honestly, like I've seen so many bands come and go in these last 26 years of putting out records myself, and I'm still very much around, still getting record deals, still in the game. But it's been a slow burn, and I think that's because of the thing you're naming that I really have blazed my own trail. I've stayed the course around the songs that I want to write and what they're about, and not everybody always was ready for that or down with that. I think now that's changed a little bit, and maybe my music has changed enough where you don't have to like be a certain way to hear it. But like, that idea that music is the through line in my unwell years as well as my well years, and that's sort of connected. I mean, I feel like that's why I have the career that I have, is that I was just sort of holding a mirror up to myself
Mm.
and letting other people see that. And sometimes that was good, sometimes that was cocaine, sometimes that was suffering and grief. But I do think it was always the truth. And so here I am, and I'm still in that mode.
I was listening to some of the songs on Softcore, the three singles that have been out. I'm
Yeah.
alone when I'm with you. I'm just a hole, sir, on the cover of To Be of Use. They're such powerful songs, and like I found myself really really engaged in the lyrics behind "I'm alone when I'm with you" because I mean anyone who's been in a failing relationship knows exactly what that feels like. When things are kind of beyond the point of repair.
Yeah.
Tell me about those songs and the new record.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think everybody knows I was in a really long relationship, very public. And that ended very badly. And I kind of quit the world when that happened. I bought a van and went and lived in it with my dog and just like was parked on the beach for 8 months. I was gone before I came back and started working with Portugal the Man and Dog Gay and things. But and as that relationship ended, I really felt so hurt that I
Mm,
needed to sort of rebuild myself from the inside out. And I started writing again during the pandemic. I got signed and started writing. Started also thinking about dating again after this 5 year break that I took. I really just tried to take a 1 year break, but then I was in the van, and then that was another year. And then when I got back, a pandemic happened.
yeah.
And so 1 year turned to 5 years, and it was like I had totally forgotten how to be a person in relationship. I was like, what is sex? I just don't get it. But also my songs were like incredibly horny because of that. So I think the record itself is like a combination of like my grieving this relationship and this hurt, my quitting the world and kind of coming back, and then my being still open to love and sex and tenderness, being committed to like staying soft. I think that's where the whole theme of softcore comes from, is
Yeah.
that I think in the past I would have really hardened up with the experience of just all of what happened. And this time I stayed open, even though the wrong people were let in too close. I think I still was able to remain steadfast in my wanting love, my wanting relationship, my wanting to be part of the world, actually, not wanting to quit the world, wanting to very much thrive in it. So I think that's new behavior for me, and the songs certainly are just a reflection of that
Yeah.
journey.
Like I said, they're very powerful songs. There's certainly a part of those songs that sounds very vulnerable, but
Sure.
you do seem to be very confident, unapologetically about how you feel about yourself and about the world and about these relationships. I think that's
Yeah.
a great message for anybody to be carrying.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm pretty clear about who I am. I think these songs do sound confident, and I think that for sure this is my best record I've ever put out. It's my 11th. Like I said, I've been doing this since 1998, and I super sucked for a long time. I mean, like it was fine. It was 1998. I was like 17 years old, making records on a 4-track Tascam. It is what it is. But like, to not suck now is so great, and I think I'm at a point in my career where the songwriting is on par with the visual stuff, which is also has a vehicle and a home at Kill Rock Stars. Like it's just like everything finally kind of came together, and I think this record is a showcase of all that.
So tell me about the short film that's going to be released along with this too. What is it? Is it a companion to the album, or is it something separate?
Yeah, it's a 5-song short musical film. We're releasing each of the scenes as music videos before the record. So there's 3 of those that are out. And then it comes out the same day as the album on June 7th. I am, like I said, I've kind of always been just as committed to the visual piece as I am the music. And I think about these things in eras. Like I really embody physically and visually the clothing the entire time that I'm sort of making videos, making studio stuff happen, and then playing shows. And that's maybe not super unusual, but for me, it's really pronounced. And this time is, I think, the deepest I've ever gone into that.
Yeah. You had mentioned Portugal the Man a couple minutes ago. I want to ask you about
Yeah,
the Pass the Mic Foundation. Tell me a little bit
sure.
about that.
Yeah, I've known those guys forever, and they played my concert series many years ago, 2017, right before Feel It Still came out and they went to the moon. Played my mental health concert series, and I interviewed them about their self care. We bonded. They asked me to go on tour with them in 2008 to sort of activate the shows with that campaign, which I did. And while I was on tour with them, just saw how much this band was doing for community. They had like Native Youth Organization there. They had my campaign doing mental health. They had me on stage talking about being a suicide survivor, getting people to take a pledge. They were raising money for women's rights with a Portugal the Woman t-shirt. These guys were just saying yes to all ways of helping the community. And it felt really very similar to like a food court or like a community village or something. It was wild. I was like, I can't believe this is happening. And the second part of that was that it was chaos. They were like saying yes, and everyone was out, but like the poor band and management was like, "Oh my God, we're rock stars and we're managers. Like we're not used to like how to run a nonprofit village." So I was like, "Hey guys, I think I can help you organize this. Like I actually have a skill set which they knew about around advocacy and music. That's what I had been doing for half a decade before that." So I pitched that we think think about a strategic session and just like talk about what the band really wants to be doing and take inventory of everything they're currently doing, which was a lot.
Yeah.
When that happened, I think that just sort of they were like, oh, and I sort of pitched a way forward. Originally, it was going to be much more focused on the band, which is where PTM Foundation came about. And then over these years, after we launched in 2019, soft launch, and then we were supposed to have our big launch in March of 2020, but there was a pandemic, so we canceled our gala, and we were able to help tribes and other folks in different ways than we had planned during all that time. Now it's really doing what it was designed to do, which is we're activating Portugal the Man shows, Boy Genius shows, NoFX shows. Lots of different bands are working with me on how to sort of center community
Mm.
on their tours, raise money in venue, and donate all of those proceeds to the local communities that they're trying to support.
I wanted to ask you also about the .gay domains from
Yeah,
GoDaddy. This sounds amazing. I mean, my understanding is it like the most successful domain launch in the history of the internet. I mean,
it was.
that sounds amazing to me. Tell me about what about that.
Yeah, it was really cool. I had been trolled for years and years by just like right-wing folks that hate gay people. So that was always been a part of it in the background. At a certain point in 2018, that became the focal point. Like I was just getting trolled. My whole career was just me navigating these horrible anti-gay people on the internet. And so right around that time, my friends at Top Level Design came to me and were like, hey, we're starting this .gay thing. It's going to be cool. It's like .com, but gay. And I was like, all right, I'll partner with you. Like, great. And as that was happening, I realized that it was an opportunity to really change the internet and reject the status quo, build something better for LGBTQ plus people online. Was able to, establish the first ever anti-hate policies. We take down sites. We donate for every .gay domain registered. We donate money to GLAAD and Centerlink. So we're keeping people safe in real life while we're keeping LGBTQ plus people safe on the internet. It's been really cool. And like you said, it was the most successful domain launch in internet history. Very surprising. And also, I think was another testament to the power of community coming together just around one single action and how you can really move the needle.
Logan, I said at the beginning, how impressed I have been with the way you have conducted not only your life, but also your career, and also about the advocacy part of you. I mean, I think that's incredibly important and very admirable the way you've done it. So, congratulations to you on all of that.
Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And the album is coming out on the 7th June?
June 7th. Yeah. Album and film and lots more stuff in the works. It's going to be a big, fun year.
Logan, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Best of luck with everything.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me on.
The new album from Logan Lynn is coming out on June 7th called Softcore. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to follow it, like it, share it with everyone you know. Also follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for regular updates. You can also email me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks again to Metro, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram of Chicopee for their support, and thank you for listening to Baxie's Musical Podcast.